I'm Brad, and today we're going to be cleaning and staining a deck using the right tools to make it easy. So here's the deck that we're working with. It has a lot of wear on it, and it has a lot of stains, like this, and that, and this, and that. The first thing that we want to do is get rid of everything off the porch so we can see what we're working with and give it a good cleaning. My wife Susan and I moved everything off the deck and either out into the yard or into the house. And making concrete top outdoor furniture sounds great in theory, until you have to move it. But when we got all of it moved, we could really see how bad the deck looked. Now thankfully the boards were in good shape, but they needed a serious cleaning and some new stain. I started by removing all the loose debris with a broom. And I switched over to the shop vac to get the leaves and dirt that are wedged between the boards and against the house. This is also a great time to vacuum off your windowsills and screens while you're at it here. And you'll want to remove anything that's touching the wood part of the deck, like plant hangers or wind chimes. And if you have a covered deck like we do, go ahead and remove the downspouts if they're attached to the posts, because you don't want to get any stain on those. All right, now we're going to start cleaning the deck, and I'm going to be using two solutions here. The first one is just a general degreaser. I'm going to be applying both of them with the pressure washer, but this one's going to help get off the grime and the stains and loosen that up. And then this one is a specific wood deck pressure wash that has oxalic acid in it, and that's going to help brighten up the wood. I'll put it on, and I'll tell you more about it as I'm doing it. And the first tool that's going to make this job easier is a pressure washer. I'm using a gas-powered model, actually two, but more on that later. But pressure washers have different tips, and the black tip is typically the low pressure tip. I put that one on the sprayer, and then I wet down the entire deck, including the railings and the posts. Now the wood is old and dry, and if you apply cleaner directly to the dry boards, it's going to soak it in quickly, and it can cause streaking if it fully dries. So giving everything a good spray down of water before degreasing is going to help those boards from drying out while the cleaner is sitting and soaking. I'm using the machine's siphon tube to spread the cleaner. It mixes the water with the degreaser in a 10-to-1 ratio, so I just put the pickup tube in the jug and then let it dilute it for me. And the instructions say to leave it on for 10 minutes and then wash it off. So I sprayed the deck down, and while I was waiting, I hit the stains in the grease spots with a deck brush to help loosen them up. Now the stairs don't get much sun, and they had a ton of mildew on them, so I scrubbed them real good as well. And then I took the siphon tube out of the bottle and I put it into a bucket of some clean water and then switched the black tip out to the green 25-degree high pressure tip to wash off the degreaser. This tip is a good mix between high pressure but not being too strong to damage the deck. So I went over the whole deck spraying off the grime and the dirt with this tip. I did keep the nozzle pretty far away from the deck to make sure I wasn't damaging the wood, and I went through in sweeping patterns removing all the cleaner. Now, it really did a great job with the mildew on the stairs, but I realized that this new pressure washer I was using wasn't the best one for me right now. One thing I wanted to know, you are going to see me switching up the power washer, so if you wonder why you saw one and then you see the other. I started off with this DeWalt 3400 PSI. Way too aggressive, that's why I was holding it so far back, because I didn't want to damage the wood. So I tried to tune it down and it just wasn't really working out for me. So I'm going to be using this Briggs & Stratton for the rest of it, and I'm able to adjust the pressure a lot lower. Just be careful when you're working with pressure washer. It will rip up your wood if you're not careful, even when you can tune it down. After I switched over, I felt a lot more comfortable about being able to control the pressure and not tear up the wood. Now for cleaning a deck, you really don't need a gas-powered model like this. Most electric ones are going to have plenty of power to get the job done. When I was spraying the columns, I made sure not to spray upwards at the top. You don't want to force any water behind the ceiling trim and have it mold up there. Now I was also getting a lot better cleaning now with this tuned-in power washer, because I wasn't afraid of tearing the wood up. Now you can see the difference here. It is pretty crazy. I just wasn't getting close enough before, but now that I was, it was really doing its job. I finished up removing all the degreaser, and then I could move on to the next step. Now that we've got the deck cleaned up really well, I'm going to go apply that second chemical, the oxalic acid, the Zeb Deck Cleaner. That's going to help brighten the wood and remove some of that extra stain and mildew that might have been left over, and it's going to help prepare for stain. It's an extra step, but I think it's really going to make the end product better. I switched back to the black tip, and I used the siphon tube to put the deck spray on so it could sit for 5 to 10 minutes. Now the oxalic acid works kind of like a bleach, and it brightens up the look of the gray weathered wood. And it works much better when the dirt and grime are already gone. So going with a degreaser first really lets the oxalic acid do its job more effectively. So after sitting for 5 to 10 minutes, I came back again with that green 25-degree tip, and I washed it off just like before. And one word real quick about safety. When you're running a pressure washer, things can be flying everywhere, so a few things to keep in mind. some safety glasses, so in case any debris comes back up in your face. You also want to wear some closed-toed shoes. Boots are great, and long pants. You don't want that beam to hit you in the leg or the foot. It could really do some damage. And also you want to have some hearing protection because the motor is loud and the water as it comes out of the high pressure is very loud. I use these IsoTunes Extras. They are Bluetooth so I can listen to music while I'm doing things. Actually, I have a great code for you too. If you use code FTBT, link down below in the description, you can get 10 bucks off this exact pair. Stay safe out there. All right, we've let the deck dry for 2 days and now you can see it's nice and bright, but I do have some stains here. I don't know when these are from, but anyway, they didn't come up. So what I'm going to do is hit them with a sander. I've also got some nails that are sticking up, so we're going to take care of those as well before we get ready to do the final stain. An orbital sander is another great tool to make your deck refinish a bit easier. Now, hand sanding off stains like this would take a long time, but an orbital sander takes them up in just a few seconds. Now, feathering the parts that you're sanding is also going to help with that final color to look more natural, so it doesn't have harsh light to dark spots where you've gone directly down to bare wood and have something dark right next to it. After that, I went over the whole deck looking for nails sticking up, and I drove them flush or below the surface so that they wouldn't catch the stain pad. An easy way to find these is to run your hammer over the surface and see where it catches. Then you can use a nail set or a punch to set them below the surface. Now, before jumping into the staining, we taped up some plastic sheathing to protect the house because we are going to be doing some spraying soon. For the finish, I went with a bare, semi-transparent stain and sealer in chocolate.
That's chocolate! That's chocolate.
Yummy. Now, you typically want to go on the darker side when restaining so that you can help cover any of the old coloring that's left over. The posts are going to be easiest to stain just using a brush, so you don't have to worry about any overspray getting up on that ceiling. I went ahead and got the top of the rails while I was at it so I wouldn't have to spray straight down either. But for the rest of the railings, and especially the spindles, using a sprayer is one tool that will save you a ton of time and make this easy. Now, this is the Flexio 5000 from Wagner, which is a high-velocity, low-pressure, or HVLP sprayer. It's got a wide spray nozzle and a fine detail nozzle, which is the one that I used. And it's perfect for getting into the spindles and not wasting a lot of material. So I started off, and I was getting a lot of drips, so I dialed back the material output, and then it was just right. I'll have a link below to the Flexio and all the different tools that I used in this build that are going to make your job easier. I sprayed one rail section at a time, doing the top and bottom rails and the 3 sides of the spindles that I could get to from there. After spraying, I backbrushed the stain onto the wood to smooth it out and fix any drips or heavy spots. The combo of a sprayer and a brush is a great way to quickly get the stain on the railings and get a smooth finish. I used a ladder to get the back sides of the posts and the outside of the railings and spindles. And after finishing up spraying all the vertical surfaces, I could then move on to the deck floor. All right, we have all the railings and the posts done, so now it's time for the deck. And for the deck, instead of spraying it, because we did tape it up to do that, I'm going to use a lambswool applicator. I think this might go on better. I'm going to find out how it works in between the cracks here. But one thing to note, when you get these out of the package, there's going to be a lot of little fur on there. So one of the things you can do is take some blue tape, wrap it around, and then pull it off. And now that'll get rid of most of the loose fibers, and that way they won't come off onto the finish. I put the staining pad on the end of a pole and I filled a paint tray, spilled a paint tray with the stain. This is not paint, guys, so pour it slowly. After cleaning up my little mess, I started on the far end of the deck using the lambswool pad. I really like this thing. It put down a ton of stain at one time and did a great job of getting into the cracks and crevices of the wood. I realized I probably should be cutting in the edges there, so I started doing that after the first few rows and working ahead of the staining pad. Now, the nice part about using the pad on the pole is that it smooths the finish out just like brushing. So instead of spraying the floor and then having to go back and backbrush any puddling, all I had to do was one stroke and it was all done in one step. As I worked my way across the deck, I got into a groove and I was doing 3 or 4 boards at a time. Now, it's good to keep a wet edge and do the full length of a board all at the same time, and doing 3 or 4 at once seemed like the sweet spot to do it efficiently for me. Now, one area to look out for, though, is between the boards. Sometimes the stain pad did a good job of getting down between them, but if they were uneven or too tightly spaced, it didn't really work as well. So I went back and I turned the pad sideways, and I would run it down the gap between the boards if I saw this happening. In some spots even, I did have to go back with a brush and fill that in if the pad wasn't doing the trick. But this was definitely the most satisfying part of the project. Seeing that new stain go on and instantly revive the worn out deck boards was awesome. I worked my way off the deck and down the stairs, and then I could let that first coat dry. It's been about an hour and a half. It says 1 to 2 hours to dry. It is very warm outside today. It's over 80 degrees, so it is doing good. You just want to make sure that it's not sticky before you put on that second coat. So for the second coat, we're just going to go over it, and the coverage is going to be a lot better on the second coat because it's already soaked down into the wood. So I'm going to go through and do that second coat on the floor before the sun starts to come in. It's always best to work out of the direct sunlight so that the stain doesn't dry too fast. When I put on that second coat, it really did a good job turning some of those lighter areas, like where I had sanded the stains before, and making them a lot darker. After drying for another few hours, the deck turned out amazing, and it went from nasty and bleached out to rich and ready for a steady summer of barbecues. And after it's cured for a few days, we'll be putting the refinished outdoor furniture back on it and enjoying it all season. If you want to check out how I refinished all the furniture to go on the deck, the video is queued up for you right there. I want to give a huge shout out to all the folks joining the Builders Club. You can check information down below, and I'll catch you on the next video.